I swore I wasn't an addict. Until I tried to quit. I never thought I had a problem. I worked, paid my bills, and showed up when I needed to. If I took pills to get through the day or needed something stronger at night, it didn't mean anything. It started small. A few painkillers for a headache, something for anxiety, something to help me sleep. Then it became part of my routine. A pill in the morning to feel normal, another in the afternoon to keep going, and something heavier at night to relax. People take medication all the time. I just didn't have a prescription. It didn't interfere with my life. I still went out with friends, showed up to work, and answered calls from my family. I thought I had it under control. Then one day, I ran out. I didn't think much about it at first. I figured I could go without for a day or two until I got more. But by the second day, my body felt different. My hands were sweaty, my stomach hurt, and I couldn't think straight. By the third day, everything felt worse. My muscles ached, my skin felt cold, and I was irritated at everything. I couldn't sleep. I kept telling myself I wasn't addicted, that I just needed to tough it out. At work, I felt slow. My boss asked if I was okay. I nodded, but I knew I wasn't. I tried to push through it, but my body wasn't listening. My head pounded, my legs wouldn't stay still, and my hands wouldn't stop shaking. I made some calls. The people I usually got stuff from weren't answering. I sent texts, waited, checked my phone over and over. Nothing. That's when I realized I was desperate. I started reaching out to people I hadn't talked to in a long time. Friends of friends, old numbers I never thought I'd need. I met up with someone I barely knew, handed over cash, and hoped for the best. The pills helped, but not as much as before. My body wanted more. I told myself I just needed to get back to normal. I started missing work. First one day, then two. I ignored messages from my boss. I knew he was getting suspicious. I told myself I'd fix it later. Money was getting tight. I borrowed from people, made excuses, and avoided questions. I started selling things I didn't need. When I wasn't high, everything felt wrong. When I was, everything felt normal again. I knew I couldn't keep going like this. But I didn't stop. One night, I took too much. I don't remember how much, just that I wasn't thinking. I woke up on the floor, my head spinning. My phone was buzzing. Missed calls. Messages. I saw myself in the mirror. My face was pale, my eyes sunken in. I barely recognized myself. I tried to stand up and almost fell. My body felt weak. My heart was pounding too fast. I sat back down, waiting for it to stop. I thought about calling someone. A friend. A family member. I didn't. Instead, I reached for more pills. I knew I had two options. Keep going or stop. Stopping meant dealing with the withdrawals. The pain, the shaking, the sleepless nights. It meant facing the people I had been avoiding. Keeping going meant more money, more lying, and the risk of not waking up one day. I didn't know what I wanted. I didn't know if I cared enough to change. But I flushed the pills down the toilet. I didn't know if I would make it. But I knew I couldn't keep living like this. I hooked up with a stranger at a party. Who turned out to be my new boss. I didn't expect anything from that night. Just another weekend, another house party, another excuse to drink too much and avoid thinking about my life. My friend dragged me to some fancy loft party in the city, the kind where nobody really knows whose house it is, but everyone acts like they belong there. After a few drinks, I started talking to this woman, let's call her Sophia. She was older than me, maybe mid-30s, confident, and way out of my league. We talked, we laughed, we drank more. One thing led to another, and before I knew it, we were in an Uber heading back to her place. It was one of those wild, no-strings-attached kind of hookups. No small talk in the morning, no promises to text later. Just fun, then gone. I left before the sun was up, thinking I'd never see her again. I was wrong. A week later, I started a new job. Nothing fancy, just a decent office gig that paid enough to cover rent and keep me from having to eat ramen every night. I showed up, met some co-workers, went through HR paperwork, and then got introduced to my new boss. It was her. Sophia. She walked into the room like she owned the place, because she did. My heart nearly stopped. She saw me, and for a split second, I saw the same shock in her eyes. But she didn't react. She just smiled like she'd never seen me before. "Welcome to the team," she said. I mumbled something and shook her hand, trying to act normal. But inside, I was freaking out. For the first couple of days, I avoided her. I kept my head down, focused on work, and prayed she wouldn't acknowledge what happened. But then came the first meeting. She sat at the head of the table, running the show like a pro. I tried not to make eye contact, but every time I glanced up, she was looking at me. Just subtle enough for no one else to notice, but I felt it. Then came the emails. Work-related, but weirdly casual. "Sophia, hey, can you drop by my office for a quick chat?" A quick chat turned into a long one. She didn't bring up the party, didn't even hint at it, but there was something in the way she talked to me that felt different. Like she was testing the waters, seeing how I'd react. I didn't know what to do. This wasn't just some coworker. This was my boss. And then, she made the first move. One night, after a late meeting, she asked if I wanted to grab a drink. Just a casual one. Just to talk about work. We both knew what it really was. One drink turned into 3. We laughed, flirted, and ignored the giant red flag waving in front of us. When we got back to her car, she leaned in close and whispered, "This is a bad idea." I agreed. Then I kissed her. We ended up at her place. Again. By the time I woke up, reality hit. This wasn't some random woman anymore. This was my boss, and I had just made things even messier. At work, things got complicated fast. She kept it professional during the day, but at night, we'd text. We kept accidentally running into each other after hours. It was a game, one we both enjoyed, but one that could only end badly. Then, rumors started. Nothing solid, just whispers around the office. People noticed the way she looked at me in meetings, the way I always seemed to leave work late when she was still there. HR got involved. Someone had reported inappropriate workplace behavior. We weren't caught, but we were close. She called me into her office one last time. She looked at me for a long moment before saying, "This can't continue." I nodded. We both knew it was over. A few weeks later, she transferred to another office. No goodbye, no last hookup, just gone. Looking back, do I regret it? Not really. It was a mess, but it was fun while it lasted. Some lessons you only learn the hard way. I lied about owning a mansion to impress a girl, and now she wants to move in. I was at a bar, chatting with this gorgeous girl Ava, and somehow the conversation turned to real estate. She mentioned how she loved guys with a good sense of style and a nice place. I don't know why I said it. Maybe it was the drinks, maybe it was my ego, maybe I just wanted to impress her. "I actually own a place in the hills," I told her. "Big house, great view." I should have stopped there, but no. I went all in. Told her about the infinity pool, the home theater, the garage full of luxury cars. She ate it up. Her eyes lit up, and suddenly, she was way more interested in me. That should have been the end of it. A one-night thing, and then I'd never have to talk about my fake mansion again. But Ava wasn't just looking for a casual hookup. She was looking for a lifestyle. And now, she wanted to see my place. Obviously, I couldn't take her to my real apartment. My actual place was a tiny one-bedroom disaster with a busted AC and a couch I found on the street. So, I did what any logical idiot would do, I rented an Airbnb for the weekend. A huge, modern house with a pool and ridiculous floor-to-ceiling windows. It cost me way more than I could afford, but I figured I'd only need it once. I invited her over. The moment she stepped inside, she was obsessed. She took pictures, asked if I had a maid, and kept saying, "I can totally see myself living here." I laughed it off. Yeah, maybe someday. Then she started unpacking her stuff. "I brought a few things," she said, dropping a suitcase in the hallway. "Figured I'd stay for the weekend." I smiled, but inside, I was screaming. A weekend turned into a week. Ava was loving the mansion lifestyle. She took Instagram photos in every corner of the house. She even invited her friends over for a casual wine night, and I had to pretend I was totally fine with it. Every time I tried to suggest she leave, she'd just laugh and say, "I'm never leaving this place." Which would have been cute if I actually owned the place. Then the Airbnb host called. "Hey, just checking if you'll be extending your stay. You're supposed to check out tomorrow." Panic. I told Ava we had to leave for renovations and that I had a second house nearby. She bought it. Now I had 24 hours to figure out where to take her next. With no other options, I moved her into my real apartment. Obviously, I couldn't just let her walk in. I had to prep. I spent hours scrubbing the place, tossing all my junk in the closet, and lighting expensive candles to cover up the smell of instant ramen and regret. Then she walked in. She stared at the walls. The cracked tiles. The tiny kitchen. The fact that the bathroom door didn't even close properly. "Where's the pool?" she asked. I tried to recover. "This is the guest house." She gave me a look like I'd just told her I was an astronaut. "Your guest house has roaches," she said. I told her it was aesthetic. She didn't believe me. She wasn't dumb. After 2 days in my tiny apartment, she started asking questions. "Where's your other house? Why haven't I seen your fancy cars? Why is the address on your mail different from the mansion?" Then, she did the unthinkable. She Googled me. And she found nothing. No property records. No mansion. No rich lifestyle. Just a dude barely making rent. She lost it. Called me a liar, a fake, a fraud. Said she'd wasted her time. Then she stormed out, posting a long Instagram rant about broke guys who pretend to be something they're not. Was I embarrassed? Absolutely. But hey, for one perfect week, I lived like a millionaire. And that's gotta count for something. I borrowed a car from a friend and it was stolen. My car was in the shop, and I needed to pick up something across town. My friend, Eric, had a decent car, nothing fancy, but reliable. He let me borrow it after some hesitation, reminding me to be careful since he had just gotten new tires. I took the car, ran my errand, and stopped by a store on the way back. I wasn't gone long, maybe 10 minutes. When I walked outside, the car was gone. I looked around, thinking maybe I had parked somewhere else. I hadn't. The space was empty. The car had been stolen. For a few minutes, I just stood there, unable to process what had happened. My mind raced with possible explanations. Maybe it had been towed? Maybe someone had just moved it? But the more I thought about it, the more obvious the truth became. Someone had stolen it because I had left the keys in the ignition. I couldn't call Eric yet. If I told him now, he would lose it. I walked up and down the parking lot, hoping for some miracle. There was nothing. I flagged down a security guard, asking if they had seen anything. They hadn't. My last option was to call the police, which I did. They asked for details, took a report, and told me the chances of getting the car back were low. That didn't make me feel any better. Now I had to tell Eric. I panicked. Instead of telling the truth, I lied. I called Eric and told him his car had probably been towed. It was a terrible excuse, but I didn't know what else to say. He asked why it would have been towed, and I made up another weak explanation about parking in the wrong spot or a possible registration issue. Eric started getting worried, asking for specifics. I promised I would check with the tow yard and get back to him. I had no plan beyond that. I started looking up impound lots, trying to find one that could make my lie seem real. I even called a few, pretending to inquire about a car that wasn't there. The whole thing was a mess. Eric kept messaging me, asking for updates. I stalled, saying the place was closed for the night and I'd check again in the morning. By then, I had no idea how to get out of this. Since I had already committed to the lie, I had to keep up the act. The next morning, Eric took it upon himself to call the city and check the impound records. There was nothing. No record of the car being towed. He messaged me again, more suspicious now, saying that it didn't make sense. I knew I couldn't stall anymore. I considered doubling down on the lie, saying maybe the paperwork hadn't been processed yet, or that there had been some kind of mistake. But the more I tried to think of ways to cover myself, the more I realized it was pointless. There was no way out except to tell the truth. I called Eric and admitted everything. I told him the car had been stolen and that I had lied about the towing because I panicked. He was furious. At first, he just listened in silence, then he started yelling. He asked why I hadn't just told him from the beginning. He said that if I had called him right away, he could have handled it differently. Now, after wasting time on a fake tow truck story, the chances of finding the car were even lower. I apologized, but there wasn't much I could do to fix it. Later that day, Eric filed a claim with his insurance. A week later, the car was found, completely stripped. The insurance paid out, but it didn't matter, he never spoke to me again. I lost a bet and had to get the worst tattoo imaginable. It was supposed to be a stupid, harmless bet. My friends and I were drinking at our usual spot, talking trash like we always did. Someone suggested a challenge, something ridiculous, something that sounded impossible. If I lost, I'd have to get a tattoo of whatever they chose. I was feeling cocky. I agreed. The challenge? Eat 5 of the spiciest wings on the menu without drinking anything for 10 minutes. I figured it'd be easy. I was dead wrong. 2 bites in, my mouth felt like it was melting. 5 minutes in, I was sweating so bad it looked like I just ran a marathon. By the time the 10-minute mark hit, I was in full-blown panic mode. I lost. And now, my friends had full control over my next tattoo. I should have set some rules. I should have said nothing offensive or nothing that ruins my future. But I didn't. The moment I lost, they started throwing out ideas. A giant banana with eyes, a cartoon version of my drunkest moment, a tramp stamp that says insert here, the worst of the worst. After a long debate, they settled on something unbelievably bad. A portrait of Danny DeVito, but not just any Danny DeVito. Danny DeVito as the Penguin from Batman Returns. Full color. On my thigh. I begged them to pick something else. They refused. A bet was a bet. The next day, we went to a real tattoo shop. No sketchy garage artist. If I was getting something this bad, it at least needed to be done well. The artist asked if I was sure. I wasn't, but I nodded anyway. The moment the needle hit, I knew I had made a mistake. This was permanent. The worst part? My friends stayed the entire time, laughing, taking videos, hyping up the artist. After 3 painful hours, it was done. I looked in the mirror. There, on my thigh, was Danny DeVito's grotesque, fish-eating, black-toothed penguin face staring back at me. I wanted to cry. My friends cheered. The tattoo became a problem immediately. At work, I forgot I was wearing shorts. Someone saw it. Now the whole office knew. At the gym, people stared when I changed in the locker room. One guy asked if I was okay. Dating? Ruined. I went on a date, things were going well, and then she saw it. She laughed so hard she had to step outside. She took a picture. Sent it to her friends. Date over. The only people who loved it were my friends, who kept showing it to strangers every chance they got. At first, I planned to cover it up. Something cool, something that didn't make me look like an idiot. Then, I thought about getting it removed until I saw the price. No way. Eventually, I just accepted it. Now, when people ask about my horrifying Danny DeVito thigh tattoo, I just say, I lost a bet.